Hello, now we're going to talk about our shoulder rest, how we can get a shoulder rest that is higher on one side and lower on the other side so that we can create a nice shelf that will hold the angle of the violin without trying to use your body, your lower back, your shoulder, to get that angle and to keep the violin held up in the air. The point of this is to be able to hold the violin up without your hand. So your hand is free to do vibrato, your hand is free to do fast-moving passages, to move into positions, and all sorts of other necessary things, and be really relaxed, because when you're holding the violin, you are not able to relax. So, first of all, I got some rubber bands on here, and I had to put some knots on the rubber bands to make them just the right size so that my foam doesn't get all cut with the rubber band, squeezing it too tightly. So I have just the right tension on these rubber bands here. And you can see I found a piece of foam that I needed to add. First of all, okay, this is a Comfort Curve shoulder rest made out of a plasticized type of rubber that you can find in the upholstery of seat cars, of vehicles. And you can find that in junkyards or any places like that. So I found it most helpful to just buy it already pre-cut with the curve that I wanted to have in it. I found it helpful to place it with these points on the inside of my neck rather than with the curve towards the end of the neck, which is, I think, the way they've designed this, for this curve to match the curve of the violin. And I found that this was more helpful because this little point over here helped hold the shoulder foam onto my shoulder because of this little point right here holding it on this side. So that's the way I found it helpful. I had to cut down my foam. You can see all the cuts that I made here because I had to make it as thin as possible on this side, which is my neck side, so that I can have it thicker on the other side and thinner on this side. So I took a pair of very sharp scissors and I just cut to it, and I actually cut this little piece off here and I had to super glue it back on because I cut off too much. And you can see that the shape of it is very flat here in front, very low here in front, and it angles back. So that places on me about here. And I found this other little piece of foam that I had to add to it because I need more height right here on the opposite, on the shoulder side of the shoulder rest. So, what I'm going to show you now is how to wrap your piece of foam that you find and you cut to fit just perfectly to be the added height that you need to make a better angle here. You want to make a nice angle so that the violin will sit at the right angle on your shoulder. And you can wrap it with non-stick, it is stick. It's called a plastic cloth that they use underneath rugs to make it so the rugs don't slip on the floor. You can get it in all different hardware stores or Walmart, different stores like that. And I just simply use this to wrap up the foam so that it will not slip neither on my shoulder nor on the violin. So some people use, for this main foam, I use different sizes of foam for different sizes of people and body types. My body, I have a bigger shoulder and a bigger body, so I need a longer piece of foam. Some of my students use this number 6 foam from a shop called the Loft Violin Shop on the internet. You can find them. It's a sturdy foam, so it doesn't lose its shape. You can also cut it down, likewise, in the same way in the front here, so that it's thinner here in the front. It has a curve for where the violin sits, but I have to wind up doing the same thing with these for all of my students. I have to wind up wrapping them with this cloth. You can get it in black, you can get it in different colors. And I have to wind up getting other pieces of foam to place onto them down here on this end to make them higher on this end. So, you can get a number 5 for the 3/4 size violin. You can get number 4 for the half size violin. And there's smaller for the quarter. There's number 3 for the 1/4 size violin, and they have a smaller one yet, I think. So these foams are very, very handy, very useful. But I'm going to go back to this one. This is also good for violas, this bigger foam. It then needs to be added to with the size of foam that you might find necessary. I've also used in the past shoulder rests out of shoulder pads, I think they call them, out of women's clothing. that I can use to also bend and fold and use this to make a higher ledge here on this side if it's necessary. Some people find a foam up here on this end necessary. In my case, because my chin rest on my violin is adjusted to fill the gap between my neck and my chin, I find that I'm trying to make my shoulder rest as small as possible. So it fills the space up as small as possible, and what's really filling up the space is the chin rest on the instrument. That is what's filling up the space. And so this is just simply there for comfort and to give the angle and to keep the violin held up. So we're going to wrap it. In my case, I'm going to wrap it with two pieces. This piece here I'm going to wrap at this end to help give the angle here. I'm going to wind up wrapping it with a higher amount with a bigger ball of material on this end to then again give the wedge shape. We want the higher end on the shoulder side and the lower end towards the neck. And I'm going to wrap this other piece here together also, and we're going to stick it together with rubber bands, and we'll find it's actually quite a nice shoulder rest. And I'm going to start off by taking, let's see, I think I like wrapping it this way. We can look over here on this table. I'm going to take this piece and wrap it all the way around. There we go. That's the way I want this thing to sit on there, like that. So I'm going to wrap it to the underside of it and place it on there like that. And actually start over here more. There we go. Now this section over here, I'm going to turn it in. I'm going to fold it around here. And the point of this is I now gained all of this material to build up the far end, the shoulder end of my shoulder rest, not the neck side of my shoulder rest, to build it up so that it's higher over here and lower down here. And then this piece, I'm going to simply fold it, wrap it up like a egg roll or something like that in those Chinese restaurants. And I'm going to get my rubber band that I measured and put a knot in so the rubber band doesn't squeeze my foam down too tightly. And you can wrap this all sorts of different ways, but this is the way I wound up wrapping this time. And I'm going to put that over this tip to keep it nice and closed down here on this end. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to make a nice roll here. I'm going to roll that roll up here on this end of it. And do that again. Roll it up on this end of it so that it will create a higher spot on the shoulder end of the shoulder rest. And then close this part in here. So now when I fold this down here, I have it higher ball on the shoulder side of things, and towards the neck side of the shoulder rest, it's all thinned down. And again, I'm going to get my rubber band that I tied some knots in to make it just the right tension, and I'm going to wrap that. You might find it helpful to put another rubber band here in the center, or not. I find that when I then place this on the back of my violin, this is the rubber band that comes with the shoulder rest, with the comfort curved shoulder rest. And you can just install a normal rubber band here if you don't have this clear latex rubber band. And I'm going to draw it over the middle of the foam and connect it to both bouts of the violin. And that actually holds it on just fine, and I find I don't need another rubber band on my shoulder rest. And you can bring it in closer here to cover up these feet so that these feet don't irritate your neck. You can bring it in here, and I now have a very, very comfortable shoulder rest, which if I place the violin at the right angle, coming down from above like a bird, I find I'm very comfortable. It stays. The violin is touching me right here on the collarbone area. The feet maybe of the shoulder rest are what are touching my collarbone. Here I have contact with my body, the instrument here, and it's very firm contact. And I just simply turn my head and nod, and my head reaches the place of the shoulder rest. There's no crunching of my neck like I used to have to do because I have a tall neck. I don't have to use my shoulder to bring my shoulder up. My shoulder is relaxed. And now I can play comfortably.